Good evening. I'd like to call the January 22nd regular meeting of the City Council to order. Let the record show that council members Bob Carling and Stephen Spadowski are present. Bob Coomer has an excused absence, and the Mayor Marchand is in Washington, D.C. at the Mayor's Conference. So could you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Would the City Attorney tell us if there's any action taken in the report out in the closed session?
Thank you, Vice Mayor Warner. No, there's no reportable action taken.
Okay. We have no proclamations or presentations. I was all set to read stuff, so not going to happen. So now we can go with the Citizens Forum. We've got 16 cards. Normally the Citizens Forum would go for a half an hour. I think we'll just get all the way through this, and then we'll go into the regular meeting. So the first three speakers are Marcellus Snedecor, Ann Call, and Greg Scott.
Like I won the lottery. I was first. I'm never first. I just wanted to, take a quick minute tonight to come in and thank you. Thank you from Livermore downtown, our property owners and our business owners, for the fact that you have been listening to an entire community, not a segregated community, but a completely inclusive community. And that is really important to us. Every neighborhood has been listened to. Every cultural interest has been listened to. So we're excited about where this is headed. We feel like you've done such a respectful thing to all of us as we've gone through this. And we're just saying, let's get her done. And again, I want to say, East or West, just do what's best.
Okay. Thank you. Ann Call, Greg Scott, and then it's David McGuigan.
Well, sort of along the same lines, I want to report to our City Council that we are planning a second Rally for Love. Do you remember last year's rally?
Yes.
I hope some of the people here happened to attend. We held it on February 12th, Lincoln's birthday, and close to Valentine's Day. The purpose of the rally was to show support for all the people who live in our area, and especially to stand with those who felt vulnerable at that time. We held it at the Bankhead Plaza, and an estimated 500 or more people attended. This year, our second annual Rally for Love will be held on Sunday, February 11th, right close to the 12th, and close to Lincoln's birthday and Valentine's Day again. This year it will be on the campus of Asbury United Methodist Church on East Avenue from 1:30 to 3 in the afternoon, and I have flyers. I gave some to Mayor Marchand last year, and I didn't want to leave you guys out. You want me to bring them?
Okay, and if you have extras, you can leave them at the door. Okay, thank you.
The groups Embracing Diversity and Interfaith Interconnect are our sponsors this year. Our theme is getting to know our neighbors as we continue to celebrate the vibrant diversity of our town and the Tri-Valley area with music, song, and dance. Mayor Marchand and a representative from Congressman Eric Swalwell's office are among our speakers. Nonprofit organizations which serve people in our area will set up information tables. There will be activity tables for art and crafts, an immigration table where people can write their arrival stories, and we all have them. We all came from somewhere, whether recently or long ago, and this was a favorite location, a favorite table at last year's rally. More than 100 people stopped by to write out a little card telling where they or their families came from. We'll have a peace poll where people can write messages of peace. and attach them to the pole. The Rally for Love is just that, a time for us to celebrate and get to know people of every culture and background. It will be a peaceful, positive, family-friendly, with lots of activities for children, a nonpartisan gathering. You all are invited to come, bring your friends and neighbors, and we'll see you on Sunday, February 11th. Do you have any questions for me?
No, I think I've been there in the past, and it's really a great opportunity, and I think I encourage everyone to go.
Thanks very much.
Greg Scott, David McGuigan, and Nancy and Gary Harrington.
Good evening, Livermore City Council and City of Livermore staff. I'm Greg Scott. In the spirit of inclusiveness and listening to voices, I hope the voices of the homeless are listened to also. And I am going to encourage the homeless to attend the Rally of Love. Homelessness is a problem in this community. It is a considerable problem in the region, and it's also, California has quite a few numbers as the Western United States, the total United States, and it's a global problem. I quote here from an article, "Cities are stepping up to global challenges, and their leadership is vital to address both local and international concerns. Mobilizing effective urban science advice for city leadership is no academic qualm. The price for failure on this front is high, as cities are increasingly at the forefront of social inequality, disasters, and economic downturns. Informing them appropriately and accountability is a moral, scientific, and political duty." I'm quoting from an article in the latest science magazine, Global Science for City Policy, where I think we can learn from other cities, and other cities particularly of the size and demographics of the city of Livermore. In trying to use some Western rationale which gave us science in the first place, how do we define homelessness and the homeless? I don't think we understand homeless and the homelessness. I don't feel that anybody really does. The homeless don't seem to have the self-awareness or the care to understand their situation, and the comfortable do not seem to understand the situation either. I get my City of Livermore flyer here, and housing is listed as number 10. Wow, that's comfortable. If you're comfortable, I guess housing is down there at number 10. How do we define homeless? How should we look at it? How about if we try some binary logic? Who are the homeless? One, there's responsible homeless, those that are working, trying to get off the floor with the bar rising away from them. The galaxy of Thrive is accelerating away from them at ever greater warp speed. There's also the irresponsible homeless. The involvement is, I call it the entanglement. The involvement can be in drugs, bad behavior, criminal behavior, psychological problems, neurophysiological problems. It's an entanglement. And who are the homeless? I'll paint a picture of one person in Livermore. She has grand mal epilepsy. She's been having seizures about every 5 days. She's been lucky she hasn't had seizures in the last 3 weeks. She's spent the last 3 years in her automobile here. It's just, I don't understand where the compassion and the empathy is for people to be living like this. And as this article said, we really need to address some of this social inequity on the homeless issue, and we are not doing so adequately. Thank you.
Thank you. David McGuigan, Nancy and Gary Harrington, and then Jay Davis.
I'm going to be saving my comments for Mayor Marchant. Somebody left a tag here of some kind.
Nancy and, I guess Nancy Harrington and then Gary Harrington.
Good evening, City Council members and City staff. It's been a while since Gary and I were here. The last was art. Sunday with Jesse. So we hear that Sunday with Jesse that the sculpture is repaired and back in its place, which is wonderful because we love it. Well, tonight we've come here to talk to you about not art, but about Shadow Cliffs, an interpretive pavilion. We know Shadow Cliffs is a park that's visited by a variety of people out here in the valley, and it's a wonderful facility. Well, Gary and I have been working with East Bay Area Regional Parks District for the past 4+ years to bring an interpretive pavilion to Shadow Cliffs. We have thought for years that Shadow Cliffs was a resource for this valley that has not been fully utilized, a real missed opportunity to help local citizens and their children learn more about this wonderful valley in which we live. We love this park, particularly the wilderness part of it. Its history is also part of this valley's history. When we contacted East Bay Parks about our idea, we were told there were many parks in their region in Alameda County. All future projects were put in priority order, and of course, Shadow Cliffs was a low priority, being such a small park. However, we told them we were committed to only Shadow Cliffs because this was our park, easily accessible by school children in the valley, and we wanted to help finance the construction of the interpretive pavilion in the park. Since finding supporters of our idea within the district, we have been working with East Bay Parks on this dream of ours, and finally have a draft plan for an interpretive pavilion at Shadow Cliffs. The goal is to have all the funding in place by July 2018, with construction beginning soon after. Since approaching this idea of an interpretive pavilion 4 years ago, the costs have more than doubled. We do not want this pavilion to be developed in phases. We know how that goes. So Gary and I are matching donations up to $200,000. The East Bay Regional Parks Foundation is seeking support from the communities in this valley in getting this project completed in one phase. The estimated cost for the pavilion is now up to $1 million. Along with our donation, the Park District is supplying funds and seeking a grant from California State Parks. The Parks Foundation is also looking for support at the corporate, private foundation, and individual levels. The Regional Parks Foundation has successfully already raised $113,500 in private contributions to match our gift, and they are writing a Housing and Human Services grant from the cities of Pleasanton and Livermore. Any amount will support this great opportunity for our community. Donors who contribute over $1,000 will have their names listed on the donor exhibit at the pavilion. Individuals or corporations can sponsor an exhibit or give to the overall pavilion construction. Anyone interested in contributing to the Shadow Cliffs Interpretive Pavilion should contact Juliana Shermer at 510-544-2212 or jschirmer@ebparks.org. Gary and I spent a Sunday over at Shadow Cliffs with East Bay Area park rangers with about 25 to 30 teachers, so we could experience the environmental ed materials that East Bay Parks provides free to teachers. It was a wonderful experience, but those materials could be used at any park. This interpretive pavilion is going to be specifically for Shadow Cliffs. It will have the animals, the fish that are stocked in the lake, also the birds, the kinds of trees, prints in the concrete, but it will be open air. So we're very excited about it, and we wanted to share that with you. And we brought the booklet that the foundation, Parks Foundation, put together and distributed just the end of December. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, Jay Davis, Jan Bravant, David Rounds.
Thank you very much. I've come to do something you probably don't get very often, come to praise you and thank you. I want to thank the members of the council for delivering a vision for downtown Livermore, which is amazing and inclusive. As a guy who was a project manager, there's a phrase I use when I teach project management, which is capable of execution. And what you have brought forward is capable of execution. You have given us a vision of a downtown with hotels that are actually hotels. They're not hotels hiding theaters inside a conference center. You have given us a downtown with parking garages, which are actually parking garages, not strange structures with plausible restaurants on the top of them, which violate several rules of building structures, and you've aligned things very, very well. So I think what you have done is taken what we have, listened to people, and split it into pieces that are capable of accomplishment. There's reason to believe that hoteliers would bid on the hotels, that people would bid on the garages, that these things could be done. So I'm very proud of you for having done that, and I want to thank you for that. I also think a word of caution, which is I like what I see in parking. I encourage you to not focus on parking for the Bankhead. We all love the Bankhead. The Bankhead is a wonderful facility, but in fact, it's a marginal facility in downtown. Even if full 5 nights a week, it has marginal impact on the traffic downtown. In particular, the question of parking for the disabled or handicapped should not focus on the Bankhead. It should focus on all of downtown. So I would encourage you to look at the small amount of parking you can provide for the Bankhead, but not focus on that as a solution for the city. And finally, I do have some concern. This, I would say, laughable notion of an arts center at the side of the Bankhead bothers me as a builder, because if you build something next to the Bankhead, you're threatening to violate several membranes that surround that building. The structural infrastructure membrane, who pays if the roof leaks? What happens if the toilets back up when you cross-couple these two buildings together? Most important, the financial membrane, because we understand how to track the economy of the Bankhead. If you build something next to it and couple it clumsily in a financial way, there are problems there. When I looked at the original business plan for that arts center, I said the only thing that was lacking was a riding arena, bungee jumping, and zip lining into downtown, because it had everything else you could imagine. So I would encourage you to use that eastern side of the Bankhead, in fact, for the disabled parking we think the city needs. You've done a great job. I'm very proud of what you've done. I look forward to supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jan Brabant, David Rounds, Alan Burnham.
Good evening. I understand that this is the only building in town that Channel 30 can use live coverage so that it can be seen live on TV. Even so, I really think it'd be best for the residents in town if you had especially the January 29th meeting, because most people are expecting that's going to be a pretty large meeting, to have that at a larger venue, preferably one that is warm. I was over in the other one on the November 29th meeting, and it was very cold, and I think a lot of people left even before they spoke or before the break. But I think even if you have to delay the airing on the TV, if you can, post it on the website, put it on the door, whatever, to get the word out for people that it will be delayed airing, I think that would be the best benefit in it. And it also shows that the City Council is really wanting a lot of the feedback and welcoming the residents to come and be able to be a participant in the process. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have David Rounds, Alan Burnham, and Jacob Anderson.
Hi, thank you, council and staff. 2 concepts for downtown were released by the city last week, and there is plenty to be pleased about. A monument and park dedicated to the cowboy and the ranching history of Livermore. A parking garage, you get a hotel, some housing, and Blacksmith Square is better integrated into the overall plan. So what is not to like? The words iconic and grand come to mind. The citizenry definitely has a vision, and the community outreach process validated that vision. The Stockmen's Association has given all of us the wherewithal to do more than was first conceived a year and a half ago when this all started. Now it is up to you to provide the leadership necessary to make this a grand plan. The concepts distributed last week were not iconic or grand. No criticism of staff here. They did as instructed and took the initial feedback, your initial feedback, and the unified concepts and made it pretty. But there is so much more that could be accomplished if one of you would step up and take leadership here. The community overwhelmingly wanted this development to be special, and the common denominator to making it special was a grand vision of a central park from the Bankhead to L Street. Why cannot this be done? You all have more than a beta version of SimCity to use for designing downtown. I have to believe that there are professional, skilled people who are willing and able to help you solve this puzzle and to solve it quickly. There has to be a way to incorporate protecting Blacksmith Square and providing an iconic central park that includes the Stockman's Monument. Provide for at least 130 workforce houses near L Street where they belong, and a hotel and cultural facilities, and maybe even adequate parking near the Bankhead. Please challenge your own thinking and show us how we all can achieve a grand vision for downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Alan Burnham, Jacob Anderson, and Evan Branning.
Yeah, thank you, council members, for this opportunity to speak. I, Alan Burnham, was dragged into the downtown development debate 2 years ago by Joan Sepula, and I have found it to be an interesting, although sometimes frustrating, experience. I supported efforts to bring more open space into the development, even if it meant a parcel tax to raise money to replace the affordable housing funds. Fortunately, the Livermore Stockman's Rodeo Association this deal came into play during the community outreach, and it completely changes the opportunities for attaining this reduced housing density and corresponding additional open space. So as in all aspects of life, it's important to recognize and take advantage of new opportunities as they come along. The city's draft concept for Stockman Park and Plaza with surrounding cultural, arts, and science assets, I think, is wonderful, and I hope you will proceed quickly and efficiently to bring the deal to fruition. I've talked at length with many people about this opportunity, and once they understand it, they're almost universally in favor of it. That said, there are highly divergent opinions about what should happen east and west of the Stockman Park and Plaza. And I hope that we can have meaningful conversations about what they might be, how one might want to consider changing the city's plan. I have submitted my suggested changes to the published city concepts for your consideration. They include having a more open housing arrangement if the hotel's on the east side, or having a west side hotel oriented along Railroad rather than L Street. In addition, I think it would be nice to have a shorter garage so that you could have a continuous path from First Street to either the hotel or Railroad Avenue. There are lots of facts that would go into this decision, and I don't claim to have all those. However, I have taken the liberty to draft a decision tree, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, and it's much more complicated than just my considerations, I'm sure. But I hope that you adopt a general plan of a kind of a decision tree as you go march through this. And in my view, the number one and enabling decision you need to make is to accept the Stockman's deal. It is what makes all the rest of this possible. So get it done. Through this process, I have found all of you to be willing to discuss various concepts, including advantages and disadvantages. There's always trade-offs through a mutually respectful conversation. And I note that listening is a two-way street, and listening does not imply agreement, only the opportunity to understand each other. As the catalyst for the Downtown Science Center, I've noticed some people asserting we have no plans, but you can dismiss those comments as political posturing. This project is tiny compared to what those involved have done professionally, and we do have a project plan. The essential first aspect of that plan is to have a viable location before spending money on architectural fees. Until you approve the Stockman deal, we're dead in the water. No project is ever guaranteed success without bumps in the road, but projects can be killed if decision makers listen only to the Eeyores of the world. And I will.
Okay. Thank you. We've got Jacob Anderson, Evan Branning, and Pablo Camargo.
Be quick. Over the past several months, I've worked hard to let people know what the city and this council has been doing to bring about a beautiful, interconnected downtown. Let me tell you, people are pleased. People are also pleased to see the end of a pothole-plagued, puddle-producing dirt lot. Now, please, keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you. Evan Branning, Pablo Camargo, Tamara Royce.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Evan Branning. I'm here speaking as a private citizen, and I'd like to say that I want to thank you, first of all, for the work that you've done. I think it has been an awesome job that you have been reaching out to the community, hearing what they have to say, and putting together a plan. The staff has come up with 2 gorgeous plans. I came into this believing that I strongly preferred one hotel site over the other, and at this point, I've seen, with the draft plans as they are, both of them look beautiful. I would be very happy to see either one built. My real focus is that we do get to move forward with this project. There is a group out there, the community group, that has been putting out information that has made it harder for people to tell what the actual process has been. They've made it sound as if there's no consensus on our side that we want to see this built and we like the plans, and they've made it sound as if everyone has voted for a plan which changes every week. I'm not quite sure how that works out, but unfortunately, that is the story they are telling. Please help and move forward this process. I hope that next week we can start to see actual final plans come out, because I would like to echo Greg and others who've spoken before me there are many issues in Livermore right now that are pressing matters, and I really look forward to us being able to reach agreements on those and work on those instead of being trapped in a constant cycle arguing over downtown. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Pablo Camargo, Tamara Royce, Michael Frederick.
Thank you. Good evening, councilmen, councilwomen. The reason I'm here is to give you more work. I moved here about 4 years ago. The reason I picked to buy a house here is because downtown, I came here. I was actually looking at Fremont, Union City, closer to work. But then, out of sheer luck, somebody told me about Livermore. I drove here, passed by downtown, did a quick Google search on the schools. Turns out this is a great town. And my wife, we're dead set on buying a house here. Like I said, I started looking around, looking to see how downtown was growing, the new houses that were being built. And I liked everything that I saw. I kind of had an idea that the council, you guys had a good plan. You guys were moving forward. You guys had a future, an idea, long-term idea of where the city was going. But when I live in Springtown, but when I saw what you guys were doing with Springtown and how the community agreed on the open space on that golf course, instead of adding more houses to the city, I said, this cinches the deal. I said, the council's going in the right direction. And, me and my friends, we've been talking about high-speed internet. We've been talking about how this city could probably become a tech hub, something innovative. I mean, you guys are already innovative. So I did some research, and I said, you know what? I think we could bring high-speed fiber internet to Livermore. I did some research. I talked to a lot of other city IT workers. I called up some directors. I actually spoke with a couple of people here in the city. And it looks like we could get it done. I know you guys have a lot of work on your hands with the downtown. Seems like everybody's talking about downtown. But if you guys are building, why not concentrate on infrastructure too? Because if you're going to bring a hotel, if you got the Livermore Labs, you got all these tech companies looking to move out of the Bay Area and looking out, seeing where they can put a foothold. Tesla, all these other companies, they're not going to be running on low-speed internet. They're going to want fiber. They're going to want giga fiber. I talked about hotels, startups, businesses right here. I've noticed that Livermore has a lot of business, sales specifically. I looked at some numbers. And when you're driving sales, when you're selling stuff, when you're into that market, you want to sell stuff quick. You want high speed to make sales efficient. You want pretty much it comes out to being efficient and fast at what you do. Sorry, I went over. I thought it was going to be faster, but if you could bear with me. What I propose is that we bring high speed internet. Is not just an idea, just throw it out there. I actually talked to other cities, specifically Chattanooga, Katz News, Pennsylvania, Detroit, Michigan, Kansas City. They're already doing it. 101 cities already pledging to do it. we could jump right in there. We already have the resources. I know you're laying down fiber already. There's federal grants that we can use. And I got the contact information from the people that actually did it, EPB and Chattanooga, that can work with us.
So if you can, speaking of the high speed, so if we can get it to the information to the city clerk, I think it's a very.
I want to know where I can send it.
It's very interesting, and I'm sure it'll possibly come up later in the meeting.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Tamara Royce, Michael Frederick, and Lisa Tromovich.
Hi, good evening, Vice Mayor and Councilman. I just am here to echo one of the earlier speakers who asked that the meeting for next week, this I believe it's a special meeting, could be moved to a larger venue. And I think there's a lot of justification for that. As we know, there's a large interest in the downtown issue throughout the community, and I think it's telling that tonight, when the issue isn't even on the agenda, that you have a number of people coming and advocating for specific points of view at this meeting. Obviously, if we're in a bigger space, I think it will accommodate more people, where it's more conducive to public engagement. And also, I think what we saw with the last big meeting, as you've heard speakers mention, that it was divided into 2 rooms. It was cold. A lot of people, elderly people probably couldn't manage in that environment. And frankly, I think also, people with young children and such are also going to be inconvenienced if they have to be off in a separate space. So I understand that, the regular council meetings are broadcast live, and I know that might be a concern. I heard one of the other people mention that. I'm just thinking this isn't a regular meeting, so maybe that practice doesn't necessarily apply, and the meeting can be done, broadcast at a later time. But I do think that we really want to encourage people to come out and know that they're part of this process, and that they can see you and be in the room with you as you debate this important issue. So I really hope you will, move this meeting next week. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Michael Frederick, Lisa Tromovich, and John Stein.
I'm going to echo the echo and also ask you to move next week's meeting to a larger venue. This room is going to be filled up 5 minutes after the door opens. The overflow is inadequate, cold, should maybe make it dark too. The situation really discourages participation. You've, in the past, on occasion, moved meetings to a larger venue, and I think this is really appropriate. The broadcasting, yes, you can't do it live, but you can record it and broadcast it on a delay basis. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Lisa Tromovich, John Stein, and Don Argula.
Behind here. Thank you, Lisa Pistonaway, Livermore. Thank you to the council, thank you to staff. I just wanted to say that the process that the city has set up for involvement in the downtown development has been absolutely wonderful. And it's been a great opportunity for people that maybe wouldn't have necessarily met each other before to meet and share something that's important to all of the community. You've been listening to all of our ideas and doing your best to incorporate as many as possible. And when I saw the designs came out, I could see that you had indeed listened to all sorts of different groups and included as many different items from different elements that people are concerned about in each of the plans, so that they each have something that represents the various needs of various constituents. I wanted to echo something that Devin Branning just said about we appreciate, I think most of us do appreciate hearing different people's ideas, and our ideas come from different ideas come from our experiences, our training, our background, and our needs at particular times in our lives. But the self-proclaimed community group doesn't represent the majority of the community. And it's been a little frustrating to keep hearing people insinuate that the
the people, the community liked or the community wanted. And I just want to be able to say up front that there's a lot of us in the community that want different things, and we need to keep reminding ourselves and each other of that. Oh, look, I have 1 minute. I would like to also just add that I've been continuing to work with a real estate consultant and researching with other small theaters and performance spaces that work with a variety of groups in small communities. And the numbers have been just fabulous, that people have really found that they bring vitality to their downtown, that they've been able to collaborate and interact well with restaurants, retail, and other groups, and that occupancy rate, the cost of occupancy is not the issue. Costs of building are in California or something else. But I'm getting a lot of good information that I hopefully will have an opportunity to share with you in the future. But thank you all very much. It's a hard road, and we really appreciate how hard it is on you guys. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. John Stein, Don Argula, Carl Wente.
John Stein, 1334 Cathy Court. At the last meeting, the mayor said that 70% of the people who live in Tracy commute to the west to go to work. At the same time, Amazon decided that the Bay Area would not be one of their 20 select cities for their lottery or looking for tax benefits. To a large extent, some of these things are caused by the Bay Area plan's successes and failures. The Bay Area plan was developed about 8 years ago, and the latest iteration about 3 years ago, 2015. And they developed goals. The goals have stayed pretty much the same through all of the iterations. And it's interesting to look at the successes and failures of the goals. Their first goal was to protect the climate and reduce CO2 emissions by 15%. That's been accomplished, but mainly through technology, more efficient automobiles, hybrids, electric. It hasn't been done by reducing congestion and by making more efficient housing. It turns out a lot of the housing is moving into the more diverse climates of the Central Valley and the Salinas Valley with much higher HVAC requirements. The second goal was adequate housing. That's been one of the spectacular failures. The goal was to house 100% of the region's projected workforce of all income levels. And basically what happened was the ABAG and MTC, which are dominated by the central Bay Area, the major cities, was unable or unwilling to build the housing to support their workforce. So their solution was to essentially move the housing to the outlying areas. And what's happened is housing is now in San Joaquin and Monterey and Sonoma counties rather than the Central Bay Area. So there's generally a 50-mile spread between the jobs and the housing. And this has caused a number of problems. Some of these could be solved by dispersing the jobs further out. And some of it could be perhaps reducing the job growth rate or building more housing in the Central Bay Area. Good examples are the 18,000 people working at Apple's new flying saucer and Sunnyvale's plans to develop their golf course with 30,000 jobs and 1,500 houses. We have some successes and some failures, but I think the Bay Area plan needs to be evaluated. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So Don Argula, Carl Wente, and finally Asa Stroud.
Thank you, council members. Dawn Argula, CEO and President of the Livermore Valley Chamber of Commerce. I'm here tonight to express the Chamber's appreciation and support for your efforts and actions taken thus far on the development of the plan for the next phase of the revitalization of the downtown district. We are excited about the prospect of advancing the major elements proposed for this phase: parking, hotel, housing, and green space, captured in the two options produced by city staff. Thank you all. I also want to thank you and city staff for your leadership in facilitating the annexation of Concannon Vineyard into the city limits. Thank you, very important. Back to the downtown, we wish to acknowledge the gift of the Livermore Stockmen's Association land swap that will result in a long-awaited park that respects and commemorates the contributions of generations of ranchers and veterans in Livermore, and which also does two things. It accommodates the community's desire for substantial green public space in the downtown district, and it offers space to offset the city's obligation for affordable housing, including the $14.5 million outstanding loan from this fund. While this has been a wonderful opportunity to explore the universe of possibilities for this 8-acre site, at the end of the day, a major factor for you to consider is just what is economically realistic. The future commercial success of the downtown district is a return on investment that will generate positive economic impacts throughout this community. Any alternative that results in a net financial loss to the community is unacceptable. This chamber supports and thanks you for your steady guidance and thorough examination of the issues and opportunities before you. We look forward to the meeting next week and weighing in again and supporting you. And pending your final approval soon, we look forward to getting projects shovel-ready and underway in 2018. And for the record, I was very comfortable in the overflow facility earlier this year. The seating is much more comfortable. We have the big screen, and we can see you clearly and the speakers, and we can hear everyone as well as the presentations. It is chilly in there because the automatic doors continue to open and close, but fortunately I had my winter coat on and my shawl, which I kept on. But it's not that horrible, let me tell you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Carl Winty, and then Asa Strout.
Hello, everybody. Again, I just want to say thank you for what you do, the service to Livermore staff all the way through. Tough, contentious, fun to watch. What is good government? And really, I wonder how many people read all 345 pages of that packet. I did. You guys sort of have to, right? But every ordinance, every exhibit, every staff report, every amendment, there were a lot of them at times going through. All the resolutions, and then I got that little thing, and Carl spoke on the process of good government. I'd say, no, I asked the question, what is good government? And then rhetorically answered it with, good government is a process, that which proceeds, that which does not stagnate. How many people looked into the public hearing and what the U.S. DOE, Western Area Power Administration's doing, the ordinance for Concannons, the matters for consideration, that emergency op plan? 99 pages, 20 pages of amendments. I mean, it's not inconsequential stuff. That is what good government does and progresses. We do get caught up on this issue that we're in right now. So be it. But it's a process, and a process set up by this democratic republic, right? We are not a true democracy, pure democracy, albeit California Code Article 2, Section 9 allows the voters to approve or reject statutes or parts of statutes, which have to be legislative acts, not just direction you're given, but a legislated, voted upon act. So, yes, it veers into just a democracy, pure, like, let's vote. But ultimately, the Founding Fathers set up this three-piece stool, right? Executive, legislative, and judicial for checks and balances. The will, not the whim of the people, to ensure that 51% majority does not repress 49, right? The republic and the elected officials that do their job. So again, I thank, and also they set it up so the elected officials and everybody all the way through will ensure liberty and justice for all. What did the outreach say? I mean, there was a lot in there. Parking, community character, open space, traffic, roadways, walkways, downtown hotel, new retail, hotel location, cultural facilities, public finance, and housing. I've spoken to a lot of people, and we got it wrong on public financing from my generation. My generation couldn't make it to all those things all the way through. We care deeply about the public finances and not putting ourselves into debt. Dawn, you said it well. I appreciate it. Also, Stockman's and that lower left parking, right, we're all on board. Let's get her done. It makes too much sense. It's open space. Now let's talk a little bit about the dissemination of false information that has been talked about, right? And it makes me mad. But we can't forget that, the Democratic Republic then formed Democratic Republicans. That was Jeffersonian versus the Federalist Hamiltonian. And they spewed venom and lies. Disraeli or Samuel Clemens said there's 3 types of lies. There's lies, there's damn lies, and there's statistics. And it's interesting to know which one is coming through, because when people are sort of crossing the line, it does make me mad. I don't totally know what to do about it. I want to avoid ad hominem, even though when I hear things like, overwhelmingly this, like the Central Park through, like, show me where you got that. Show me the documentation. I've read all these reports. I've seen it all. We all want iconic. We all want a meaningful conversation. It's a process. It's not done. We all want that decision tree. Yes, sir, right? We're not saying finish it all right now. Keep the process going. Beautiful, interconnected, absolutely. What do we do about this dissemination of false information? We should hold ourselves to a higher standard, as do you. Thank you for what you do. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Asa Strout.
Don't get too excited. I'm not going to be as animated as Carl. I just want to say I'm here with the group Build Downtown. I don't know if you guys have heard about it yet, but we're an advocacy group that wants to see downtown develop as soon as possible. Preferably 2018 is when it starts, with a focus on building fast, building smart, and building efficiently. I'm here to say that we appreciate as a group and as a city that the city staff and the council have released the drafts to the downtown development as soon as they are ready to be reviewed by the city. It has allowed the citizens of our city to start the discussion about the downtown earlier than January 29th, and individuals who did not attend these meetings to be reached. And we're actually reaching, through our communication, reaching individuals who didn't know that there was an outreach program to begin with. So I think it's really good because it gets their discussion going, gets more people who weren't involved. I mean, we're a city of 88,000, 2,000 people participated. So there's a big gap, and so we're trying to like bridge that gap a bit by just sharing our information. It also allowed us to, sorry, I lost my spot. So I'd actually, at this point, I would actually like you to continue to share and to go above and beyond and share more details. The draft plans are great, but to know more about some of the cost between these 2 plans, which one costs, or rough estimates, if they're even possible to get. But as soon as there's more information that we can share to help the general public develop an opinion between the 2 plans, we'd appreciate it, because then we can share it as soon as possible to make sure that everybody gets it, ideally before the 29th. But we understand if it's not possible, we're looking forward to the packet being released this week. And in the spirit of building smart, I would like to ask the council to consider passing a measure that would ensure that city funds are not used during the development plan when they're not, where they shouldn't be used, to ensure that the city is not on the hook for any debt or any long-term maintenance of facilities that the city shouldn't be owning going forward. And that's all I had to say as a member of Livermore, or Build Downtown now. But as a resident of Livermore and a visitor of downtown often, I'd actually like to see the council and the staff consider putting back the benches that were by the Panama Bay Coffee Shop and the Union restaurant. I used to hang out there all the time growing up. I used to live downtown. And now that they're not there, it's kind of left a void, and to the point where I was just there the other day and there's a table there kind of replacing them. So, you know, the benches were a nice little center point. It's right there. You can look at people watching by the ale house and everything. So I'd like to see them put back in. I'm not quite sure why they were removed, but I've heard rumors, and I hope those rumors weren't true. But yeah, so as a citizen, that would be my last part. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and thank you all for all your comments. And now it's on to the consent calendar, and these are items are considered routine and are acted upon by the City Council with a single action. Members of the audience wishing to provide public input must complete a speaker card. We have 4 speaker cards for item 4.02. So at this point, would like to know if any of the other council members would like to pull any item for discussion. And if not, could I get a motion to approve the consent calendar except for item 4.02?
Well, I think you know who's going to give a motion in a second tonight. I mean, there's only, we're going to be on the record tonight, so
I'm in suspense.
Yeah, well, here you go. So I'll move 4.01 and 4.03 through 4.07.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion?
No.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any and no opposition. Okay, so at this point, want to I think invite the people who have put speaker cards in to talk about item 4.02, which is adoption of the ordinance amending Livermore Municipal Code, Chapter 2.14 on the elections, and this has to do with the campaign contribution limits. So the four speakers that I've got are Michael Frederick, Evan Branning, Jacob Anderson, and Asa Strout.
Hi. I'm really disappointed in your decision to eliminate any campaign contribution limit. I could see increasing it to $2,500. Presidential campaigns can only take individual contributions less than $2,700. With no limit, who are the people that are going to be giving you those big bucks? It's people who want special access and special favors. Your decision to eliminate the contribution limit is a sad day for Livermore. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Evan Branning.
Good evening again. Still Evan Branning, still private citizen. So I wanted to comment on this because I also am disappointed to see the spending caps being completely removed. I do understand the need for it, and as we've seen in the last election, for those who are not aware, there was somewhere close to $250,000 spent by the Friends of Livermore. That equals to about $25 for every single person in Livermore paying for an election. Those amounts of money, that kind of contribution, is impossible for anyone else to be able to counter for any other messaging to get out. It's able to drown out the rest of the conversation, and it makes it so an election is not as fair and free as it is supposed to be. It is unfortunate that we find ourselves in this position, and I do hope that the City Council will consider either putting in a very high cap or putting in language such that when PACs are reined in again and big money is pulled out of politics, that we're able to immediately revert back to some sort of limit. This is not an ideal situation. This is damaging to our democracy. This is damaging to our elections. I hope that we never see another election like we did 2 years ago, where we have so much money pouring in from such a small group to distort and to challenge the incumbents. So please consider taking this measure and looking at it as a temporary means, a temporary measure to combat the money that is already coming into politics. But please don't look at it as a permanent solution to the problems we are facing. Thank you.
Thank you. Jacob Anderson, then Asa Strout.
Sorry, it's not going to be as short as last time. I'm sad that we have gotten to this point, to the point where big money in politics has reached our local level. I never thought that super PACs would become an issue here in Livermore. I wish there was a way that you could limit super PACs rather than remove the campaign limits. By removing the campaign spending limits, I worry that you will open Pandora's box. The money will start to flood our community elections, and not just from people that occupy our current local PACs. I feel we are trying to stop a fire with more fire. While sometimes it can be an effective trick, it could end up starting a fire that we would be troubled to put out. So tonight I ask that you take some steps and keep spending from becoming out of control. First, look into the possibility of putting some sort of cap on campaign spending. The gubernatorial race is a $28,000 cap for individuals. Even a high limit as such would give some sort of cap. Secondly, please add some language that would cap spending limits when hopefully super PACs can be limited. Maybe even as a last resort, add language that would tie campaign limits to any future super PAC limits. I'm tired of money trying to run this town, and I hope that someday it won't anymore. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Asa Strout.
I'll keep this one shorter. Just to kind of echo what everyone's saying is, I too am very concerned about big money in politics. I found out about the amount of spending that was happening, not just the last election, but it's been the last couple of city council elections with the amount of money that has been being spent upwards of $150,000 per election, and then up to $250,000 last election. And it's obscene, because then it allows a smaller group who are established and wealthier to then basically anoint two people because they can just outspend. Councilman Spiegowski mentioned that it takes $15,000 to email the entire city, where in the last election, the person who came in third place spent $6,500. It was physically impossible for that individual to spend that much. Now, I see raising the cap will allow that person to possibly raise more, but what that allows is the floodgates to open up on two candidates or three that a small group of individuals can just flush with cash. So I'd actually like to see some sort of compromise in terms of the amount being capped, but you can increase it so it does at least promote going out and reaching out to more people to collect more campaign finances. I mean, I'd wish campaigns were not as expensive as they were, but that's just kind of the nature of the beast that we're in. So just kind of looking for some sort of compromise in terms of raising the limit, because $250 is, in my opinion, too little, but unlimited is far too high. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. At this point, is there any discussion? First of all, do I have a motion for 4.02?
I'd like to ask the Mr. City Attorney about the PACs. I mean, we have the ruling from the Supreme Court on Citizens United. We don't have a lot of leeway in terms of allowing PACs to behave however they want. Is that true?
That's true, and there are two aspects we should probably consider. So first off, Jason, I'll call your city attorney. The first off is a case that was developed back in the early 1970s that articulated the basic tenet of law that you cannot regulate how much is actually spent in an election by a particular candidate or a group. You can regulate at that time what was received as a contribution. As that law evolved more recently, the limits say you cannot limit the contributions received by an independent expenditure committee except under certain circumstances. Now that varies from state to state. That law is to continue to evolve. In California, you could limit that for an independent expenditure committee, but you had to go through an analysis, and it is suspect law. We discussed this back this past summer. I believe it was in September. We brought this to you. We covered these different areas. We have very limited opportunities. At that time, the council was presented with the options of revising the contribution limits to a certain amount. We got to a study to determine whether to impose those limits upon all committees, not just candidates and candidate-controlled committees, but also independent expenditure committees. If we took that second step to impose it upon independent expenditure committees, we had to go through an additional further analysis to determine whether it could be legally justified. In the face of that, and in response to the council's desire to allow candidates to mount meaningful campaigns, the decision and the direction was to limit the contribution limits, but in an offer of compromise to require all campaign committees, both candidate-controlled, as well as independent expenditure committees, to be subject to disclosure requirements, to allow the public to see if there were large contributions, to identify those and gather what they will if they're an informed electorate. And that's what you have before you today.
Yes, thank you.
Mike, clarifying question. When do the disclosures need to be made for either the PACs or the candidates?
Those are set by the Elections Code, so under the regular disclosure requirements for campaign contributions, it would follow the normal process. There is one unique one just prior to the election in Livermore, though. It is set by our ordinance. I don't have that at my fingertips, though.
Okay, and I believe there was a certain amount threshold that if a candidate received, we had to disclose immediately. Was I correct in understanding? I think it was above $1,000. Or is that the? Am I confusing that with the contribution limit that limits a council member for deciding on an issue brought forth by the person who contributed? Because there was a concern issued that people would be buying or they'd have undue influence, but I believe we addressed that back in September.
So there's a second body of law that that does apply, and it says that if a candidate receives a contribution of more than $250, either within 12 months of a particular decision. So if an applicant has a matter pending before the city council and had made a contribution to a particular council member over $250 within that year, that council member would be required to recuse themselves from participating in that measure.
Right. Okay. And also, one of the things that I wanted to discuss, one of the items that I wanted to bring up, and we brought this back up in September, during the last election, there was also a new group that formed. I believe they were in support of the Lennar plan. I don't have the actual number off the top of my head, but I think it was around 50,000 or in excess of 50,000 that was raised by a new group. So there's very little that we can do to stop any other PAC from forming and coming into town right at the election. And by the time, when you're talking about money being raised and funds being spent with an election, by the time the reporting is required, it's often too late. That was one of the difficulties in establishing any kind of cap. And if you look at most cities in the Tri-Valley, they don't have a cap on the spending. So it's $15,000 or $16,000 this year to send out a flyer to everybody in town. Next year, it could be far more. And you're ending up playing catch up with constantly revising expenditure limits. So, going back through the funds that have been raised by candidates for the city of Livermore, throughout the elections, that all the forms that were available online, I don't believe I found anybody that was over $15,000 raising funds, any singular candidate. So this is really about candidates being able to control their own message. And I think that that's very important, that candidates are at least able to have a chance to compete. So that was our reasoning for, or at least my reason for bringing this issue up, and the decision with the contribution limits. So with that, I don't know if there's any other discussion or question.
Well, I'm looking for a motion, then we can discuss the motion.
Sure.
I'll move accept 4.02.
And I'll second.
Any discussion on the motion?
Not anymore.
So, well, I'll just add my thoughts on this. As I recall, and just listening to what was just reiterated here, there is no practical significance to what we're doing, really. It's symbolic, and it's symbolic because of the incredible amounts of money that were raised and spent in the last election. We're talking about a single individual contributed $78,000. That's 10 times what an individual candidate would typically have to put into an election. The PAC that we're talking about, Friends of Livermore, had $210,000. That's 30 times what an individual candidate would do. This is an incredible amount of money. And yes, there was another PAC that was got in there. But the practical point is that if people with big money want to influence an election, they've got a path to do it already with the PACs, and they do it. And it's right here in Livermore, and it's astounding to me. I've been here 40 years and just never really thought about it. So this is symbolic, and frankly, the restrictions on a candidate getting the money directly are far greater than what would happen in a PAC. And actually, I believe that if there is somebody out there that wants to influence the election, they'll do it through a PAC. Because if it's done directly, from what I just understood and what you just heard, then the candidate has to recuse themselves from anything to do with that person. So practically, what will be done is the money will go through PACs, and that's the way it is. And that this is, as I say, just simply symbolic. So with that, I'll call for a vote on the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. And all opposed, none. So it passes unanimously. Okay, now we'll open the public hearings. And the first one is item 5.01. The hearing to consider a request by the United States Department of Energy, Western Area Power Administration, for an out-of-area service agreement to allow its Patterson Pass Road substation to connect to the city's sanitary, sewer, and water systems. And we have...
Thanks first. Presentation first.
No, yeah, I'll do it. Okay. I'm just, running the meeting. You get cards and everything else. So we're going to start with the presentation. Then I did want to mention that we have one card to talk on this issue, but let's start with the presentation.
Vice Mayor, I would like to introduce Turhan Sonmez to you. This is his first appearance at the City Council meeting. He has been with us for over a year. He started last November as a limited duration associate planner and competed with a highly qualified field, was offered an associate permanent position and accepted it, so he is here tonight, but he has been with us for over a year doing some of our more complex projects, and so just introducing Turhan to you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Very happy to be a part of the city. With that, I will begin my presentation. Good evening, Vice Mayor and members of the council. As stated, the item I'll present is out-of-area service agreement 16004 for the proposed connections to the city's sanitary sewer and potable water systems by the Lawrence Livermore Laboratory Substation facility. The substation is owned and operated by the United States Department of Energy Western Area Power Administration and located at 8421 Patterson Pass Road. The project site is a 14-acre substation facility located just beyond the city's eastern boundary and North Livermore urban growth boundary. The facility is connected to one of California's largest electrical grid systems, providing power to Central and Northern California communities and the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. The requested sewer and water service would exclusively allow for an existing on-site restroom to become operational for use solely by substation employees providing maintenance of the 14-acre substation facility. There are currently no operational restrooms on site, only a portable restroom facility. This slide shows the conceptual site plan for the utility connections. As shown here, existing connection points to the city's sanitary sewer and potable water services are located in close proximity to the substation site at the intersection of Greenville and Patterson Pass Roads. Western Area Power would need to obtain all necessary encroachment permits for the connections and pay all construction costs, sewer connection fees, and monthly use charges and other city fees. Staff has found the project to be categorically exempt under CEQA pursuant to Section 15301, which exempts minor alteration of existing facilities of both investor and publicly owned facilities. The proposal is consistent with the city's general plan, including the North Livermore Urban Growth Boundary Initiative, which allows public utility extensions beyond the urban growth boundary to serve permitted uses. The substation facility is a permitted public use. Pursuant to the city's out-of-area service agreement policies and procedures, the out-of-area service agreement will provide public utility connections to further a broad governmental interest, and the agreement will not require LAFCO approval. In conclusion, staff recommends City Council adopt the attached resolution, making the findings, certify the environmental documents, approve the out-of-area services agreement, and authorize the Community Development Director to execute the agreement. That concludes staff's presentation. At this time, I would be happy to respond to any questions. Also, our representatives from Western Area Power Administration, George McAllister and Susan Nielsen, are in attendance if you have questions for them. At this time, I believe George McAllister would like to make a brief statement.
On behalf of Western Area Power Administration, I would like to thank the City Council, staff, and particularly Mr. Sonmez for your consideration of an action on this request. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. At this point, are there any questions from council?
Will this cost the city anything?
There's a section of the staff report that deals with fiscal and administrative impact. It states the proposed out-of-area service agreement and subsequent utility connections will not have a fiscal impact on the city. WAPA, Western Area Power Administration, will pay the full construction costs associated to install the water and service laterals from existing city water and sewer mains to the site and pay all required permit and connection fees at the rates current at the time of connection. So no, it will not cost the city.
Thank you.
So you're telling me you want to take a portable toilet and replace it with a full bathroom?
Yes.
That sounds good to me. Who wouldn't want that? I mean, I feel for your employees having to use a portable facility for how long? And I assume, you know, I don't know if you've had any issues with water quality or regional board or anything like that, but I assume, you know, we can anticipate more of these requests coming in as more and more environmental regulations are tightened around the use of those facilities. So congratulations. Get rid of the portable.
Well, we have a speaker card here. So Philip Marshall.
Hi, I'm Philip Marshall, and I own the property surrounding this transmission plant. If we could put on the screen the photograph showing the location of the transmission plant. So essentially, I own the property to the east and to the south of the plant. And I concur with the applicant. This is a good thing. Get rid of a portable restroom and install a working facility that doesn't pollute the environment. What I would ask staff to consider, and I've already talked to the applicant, is in the process of installing these facilities, they provide fire protection. That is a fire hydrant. Now, there will be water delivered to the site, and there won't be an undue cost because it's a fairly significant line in place already, and add a fire hydrant. And then I would also ask that the city consider upsizing the lines down Patterson Pass or down Greenville to a maximum capacity. That is the capacity that's in the Greenville and Patterson Avenue street section. This new construction that they're proposing from Patterson Pass Road to Old Patterson Pass Road be sized accordingly. Now, again, I own the property surrounding this plant, and having a sewer facility would be a significant benefit to me. But yet we are outside the city limits, so we cannot tie into this now without a significant zoning change. I do have land, I do have sewer connections in front of me. I do have City of Livermore water connections in front of me, but we can't tie into it without a zoning change. And we're not proposing to do anything now, but I would do request that the council consider when they do this kind of construction, because yes, it's going to come up again and again as our environmental resources are extended, particularly with nitrates in this area, as you experience with septic systems and things like that, that these facilities are going to be expanded upon, and minimally at first, and hopefully that something will develop in this area that will allow for some competent growth. Do you have any questions?
Any questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So have officially opened the public hearing. I'd like to officially close it at this point. And now, is there any discussion?
Sure. A question, and I see we have the chief and other fire staff in the audience. Is there a fire hydrant located in the vicinity of this facility? Have you had that discussion?
We have not had that discussion. I'm not aware of a hydrant facility out there. The water service is Cal Water. It's not a city water service, and the proposal here is not for water service. So it's not really a question before us.
Sure. Okay. So there's no work being conducted with the water service associated with this parcel. It's sewer.
That's correct. I'm sorry.
Oh, so they're getting drinking water. Okay. Okay, and that would require a different infrastructure than the fire hydrant, or is that the same infrastructure as drinking water?
Yeah, it's same infrastructure but different sizing, and
it's a different sizing.
Yeah.
So it would increase the cost.
That's
and I see
correct.
our city attorney is itching to. I
couple of
usually
the-
trigger him, so.
A couple other things to consider with that would be you have the application and the action before you. This is an out-of-area service agreement that we're considering here today. The service area is Alameda County, so providing fire hydrants and fire service is a different consideration that we'd have to analyze with them. There's also other CEQA that would be involved with that if you were to upsize a water line or the other requests. It's a separate action.
Okay.
If the council were to bring that back, we would be able to articulate the other items associated with that, which are growth-inducing impacts and other items that would be of consideration and have to be taken into account.
So it sounds like it's going to trigger additional work and cost.
Yes, a more comprehensive review as well, yes.
Okay.
And there are very limited circumstances under which we can extend utilities to other properties outside the urban growth boundary. So upsizing would is not really justified without a known request or need that the city is capable of responding to.
Okay, thank you.
I have a slightly different question from the representative from WAPA. How long have you been operating with a porta potty now? This is not a new facility, right? And what's changed?
No, sir. The facility has been in place for about since 1990.
And what's changed?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand his question.
What's changed? Why are you asking for? Yeah.
That's a good question that I'm not sure how to answer. The only thing that I could say probably, and this is just a guess on my part, is that the cost may have been considered at that time, and back in 1990, it is an assumption again, I think on our part, but not necessarily substantiated assumption, that there was probably no utilities out in that area at that time. That we think that the footprint of Livermore has changed to some degree and moved in that direction, and some of the utilities were installed in a more recent time.
How often is somebody even at the facility?
How often do you have people at the facility?
On a minimum, we have a substation inspection once a month, every 30 days, or as routine maintenance or emergency maintenance dictates. It is an unmanned facility normally, and people are normally on site only for maintenance purposes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion?
Sure, I'll move approval of item 5.01.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 No opposed. Passes unanimously. Okay, now I turn to item 5.02, hearing to consider pre-zoning the Concannon Winery property to plan development 17-003 to establish development and land use standards that are appropriate to the winery site and will become the zoning for the property upon annexation. We'll be starting with a presentation on this as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you, and good evening, my Vice Mayor Warner and members of the City Council. This is this item is pre-zoning the Concannon Winery as part of annexing the winery's campus, and this is a follow-up item based on your direction from the November 13th, 2017 council meeting. At that meeting, council directed staff to amend the proposed pre-zoning of the property to further limit potential development and maintain the existing conditions through a planned development. A little bit more background. On October 9th, Council found that the annexation and provision of sewer service to the winery site was consistent with the general plan goals and policies to promote South Livermore Valley as a premier wine region and to proactively protect the viticulture and cultivated agricultural resources, and thus authorize staff to prepare an application for LAFCO. However, concern of potential development of the site under the South Livermore Valley Ag Zone, Council directed staff to work with parties to amend the existing conservation easement, which encumbers the property, to include additional restrictions. Ultimately, the easement holder, Tri-Valley Conservancy, decided not to amend the easement and include those provisions because it was not consistent with their typical practices, and they typically do not regulate land uses within inside the building envelope. On November 13th, Council adopted the South Livermore Valley Ag pre-zoning, but also directed staff to develop a plan development tailored to the site. If approved, staff would substitute these plan development standards into the LAFCO application and replace South Livermore Valley Ag as the pre-zoning. On December 19th of 2017, the Planning Commission reviewed the plan development and is recommending the council approve those standards. Next slide, please. Here is the Concannon Winery campus. It's located at the end of South Livermore Avenue on the north side of Tesla Road. The red line indicates the annexation boundary, and the property is adjacent to the city limits, shown here in pink, as well as the urban growth boundary, shown as a dotted line. The winery campus itself is this cluster of buildings. It's made up of administrative offices, a caretaker unit, which is formerly the James Concannon home, bottling facilities, tasting room, which is formerly the original winery building, and other improvements that collectively function with each other as a winery and visitor destination. Next slide, please. The proposed plan development would accomplish the following. It would allow up to an additional 6,500 square feet of building and structure coverage or floor area. It would limit building and structure heights to 30 feet. It would proactively protect the site's historic resources. It would allow for wine country visitor services and activities currently occurring on the site to continue. And it would allow a wine country inn with a maximum of 14 guest rooms. That inn would be subject to the 66,500 square foot maximum. Next slide, please. As we just discussed, the entire Concannon Winery is encumbered with a conservation easement. It's shown in green. The building envelope is shown here in red, and the annexation boundary is also shown in red. One parcel is currently unencumbered. As a condition of annexation, the easement would be amended to include that parcel. Next slide, please. And this would be the new building envelope configuration. So all development would have to occur in that building envelope, subject both to the easement and the plan development standards. Next slide, please. So here is the winery campus. Again, the red line is the building envelope. And this cluster of buildings, again, is what we refer to as the Concannon Winery campus. Highlighted are the historic buildings on the property. The plan development will maintain this current configuration and also permit some small-scale development and allow for some flexibility for additional site modifications and other improvements. The plan development includes a 200-foot setback from Tesla Road and also a 100-foot separation from historic buildings in order to protect the historic and visual characteristics that are unique to the site. Next slide, please. The wine group, the Friends of Livermore, Friends of Vineyards, and the Sierra Club have accepted the standards that are set forth in this plan development. Adoption of this plan development would maintain the current conditions. It would provide some flexibility to adapt to changes in the future. It would also protect the unique resources inherent to the site. Adoption of the plan development would also help facilitate annexation, connection to sewer, and thus relieve a groundwater quality issue. And so for those reasons, staff and the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council certify the environmental determination and introduce an ordinance adopting Plan Development Commercial 17-003 for the Concannon Winery campus. Kevin Baskin, director at Concannon Winery, is with us this evening, and he has a brief statement, and he and staff are available for any questions. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Kevin Baskin, work for the wine group and at Concannon Winery. Been there about 10 years, 15 years with the wine group. We accept the Planning Commission, what do you call it? recommendations. I know we worked on weekends, 7 o'clock at night. We met with you. We finally got it done. It's been going since 2015. It's been a long road, 2010 from the State Regional Water Board. So it's been a long and expensive ride. So hope you approve it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone on the council have questions at this point? Okay, I would now like to open the public hearing on this item and call Tamara Royce.
Hi, good evening again. Thank you. I'm here tonight. I'm the president of Friends of the Vineyards, and I've been asked to speak not only on my own group's behalf, but on behalf of Friends of Livermore and the Sierra Club. And we're really pleased about this this project and getting Concannon the sewer that they need. I think you all know that. I know we've worked with Councilman Warner to facilitate coming up with a way to help this landowner and at the same time ensure protections to show the city's commitment, I think, to controlling growth, especially in our precious wine country. And so I think this is going to be a really good solution, and I hope it ends up setting some sort of precedent for future annexations that may come up that, you know, we need to be very careful about how we grow outside our urban growth boundary and in adjacent properties. That being said, I just wanted to take a minute to call attention tonight to Friends of Livermore and their involvement in this. This is one of the kinds of projects that since I moved to Livermore and got involved, you know, Friends of Livermore has been at the forefront of protecting a lot of what we have here now. They're a very valuable, invaluable organization within this community. If it hadn't been for Friends of Livermore, I don't know if we would have had our First Street streetscape, the Bankhead Theater, our urban growth boundary, which they were instrumental in, you know, promoting and getting an initiative so that the council ended up adopting the initiative as the city's law. They helped fight the Pardee development that would have extended our, you know, broken the urban growth boundary and built thousands of homes in North Livermore. And I don't know if everyone who's dealing with this controversy in town knows the history of this organization and how much the people that head it care about this community and have worked tirelessly to make sure that it stays a beautiful place to live. And not only that, but I think they've supported everyone who is currently sitting on our city council. So I just want the audience and the public to know that, you know, whatever is going on, these are people who are working on behalf of this community and really have a vision and are committed to it. And I just hope that that's not lost sight of in all the acrimony that we're seeing now with these projects going on. But again, we're really happy, all three organizations, about Concannon and getting this done. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to close the public hearing at this point. Any further discussion at the council?
I'd like to make one comment. I'd like to thank Concannon for hanging in there. This has not been a simple process, in particular in dealing with the regional board and all the fines involved with that. I think many companies would have just closed shop. And so I really thank you for hanging in there through this very strange and convoluted process at times and very frustrating. Again, you know, the easy thing would have been for you just to shut down and we would lose such a great feature to our community. So thank you very much. With that, I'd move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion at this point? So I'd just like to say that I'd like to thank all the parties that I was able to work with, and Councilmember Spadowski also was involved. And just thank everyone for being just reasonable and straightforward. And we, with a lot of hard work, we got there. And that, as others have alluded to, it'd be nice if that could be the model of how to do these other things. The other person I'd like to thank, actually, along with the wine group people, Concannon, is also David Kent for helping me understand more of the larger picture of the wine industry in the valley. I didn't really appreciate what the economics were and what mattered here, and I thought his insights were helpful. So with that, I'd like to call for a vote. For all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. And passes unanimously. At this point, I'd like to now turn to matters for consideration. 6.01, Emergency Operations Plan for the City of Livermore.
Good evening, Vice Mayor, members of the council. I'm Ruben Torres, Fire Chief. As part of the City Council's goals and strategic priorities regarding disaster preparedness and public safety, we are here to present a brief overview of the City of Livermore's updated emergency operations plan. With me this evening is the Director of Emergency Management for Tetra Tech, Christopher Godley, the Emergency Manager for the Livermore Pleasanton Fire Authority, Tracy Hine, and the Emergency Manager for the City of Livermore, Herbert Cole. On January 8th, the City Council was provided with an update on the overall disaster preparedness goal. One component of the disaster preparedness goal was the update of the current emergency operations plan. Director Godley will provide an overview and highlights of the plan, and staff recommends the City Council adopt a resolution approving the emergency operations plan. I will now turn it over to Director Godley for the presentation.
Good evening, Vice Mayor, council members. Again, Chris Godley of Tetra Tech, your hired gun for the evening. I should mention, though, before going over to the private sector some 5 years ago, I served as a local government emergency manager here in the San Francisco Bay Area, in Sonoma County, Marin County, and most recently as the Director of Emergency Management for San Jose. So I believe that experience is incredibly important in developing and supporting local jurisdictions developing their emergency plans. Next slide, please. The Emergency Operation Plan outlines how the City of Livermore, its government, stakeholder agencies, community-based organizations, business community, and residents, visitors coordinate their response to major emergencies and disasters. The EOP identifies strategic operational strategies and plans for managing inherently complex and potentially catastrophic events. The plan is the foundation, essentially, for disaster response and recovery operations for the city, and may be used as a reference and guidance document. The plan outlines how the City of Livermore government complies with and implements the requirements of the California Emergency Services Act to protect the lives and property of the community of the City of Livermore. The plan establishes the emergency organization, specifies policies and general procedures, and provides for the coordination of the responsibilities of the city as a member of the Alameda operational area with other member organizations in all phases of disaster response and preparedness. This plan builds on previous efforts to enhance the city's emergency and disaster preparedness capabilities and includes critical elements of the Incident Command System, National Incident Management System, as well as California's Standardized Emergency Management System. This is not an academic exercise. Recent experiences here in California and across the country demonstrate how we are always at risk and how important this kind of effort is. Next slide, please. The last emergency plan was last adopted by the Council in 2005, and it was titled the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan. The current version reflects a change in the industry in terms of moving towards how the plan is organized, which we'll discuss in some detail. The update itself for this current version was initiated in November of 2016. And since the mass major update in 2005, we've incorporated a number of policy and industry changes in how the city might respond to a disaster. For example, those changes brought forward by the Hurricane Sandy Reform Act. An interdepartmental team was assembled by the city to help draft the emergency operations plan. Tracy Hine led the project and developed the stakeholder coordination that was essential to providing critical input in developing a plan that's customized and appropriate for the city of Livermore. Tetra Tech, our firm, was hired to facilitate that process. And based on guidance from the federal government and FEMA, the EOP was developed with input from each city department according to the department's designated responsibility in the city's emergency response organization. The basic plan here is subject to various review and approval processes, whereas appendices and various annexes are not necessarily subject to review by the council. Major changes will be submitted to the city manager for approval or recommendation for review by the city council. Next slide, please. As was part of your discussion 2 weeks ago, this is part of the larger emergency management organization efforts undertaken by the city to address 4 phases of emergency preparedness and management. Currently, we are working in the preparedness phase. Your local hazard mitigation plan addresses the mitigation phase. Here in preparedness, we're developing the emergency operations plan, which will guide your emergency response once you move into a response phase. That is an actual moving towards addressing the needs presented by a major disaster or emergency. Next slide, please. And I should also mention it ties directly into the local hazard mitigation plan efforts, building on identification of your threats and hazards, and really ensuring that the plan can encompass all those things that could possibly impact the city and the larger community. Next slide, please. The Emergency Operations Plan purpose is severalfold to provide the framework, concepts, and policies that will ensure the effective management and coordination of the city's response to major emergencies and disasters. It identifies roles and responsibilities for city departments. It codifies the city's understanding of and adoption of state and federal policies. It serves as the foundational document for other city supporting plans, as well as supporting plans of other government agencies, community-based organizations, and others such as the private sector. It also ensures that we're, as the City of Livermore, in compliance with state and federal laws and regulations, such as the California Emergency Services Act. Next slide, please. The basic plan, or base plan, if you would, may be augmented by additional or functional hazard-specific plans and appendices and annexes. Some of these were discussed at your last council meeting. This is a shift in organization and format from the traditional multi-hazard functional plan that you may be more familiar with, the 3 or 4 inch binder that many jurisdictions adopted in the late 1990s and early 2000s, in that this plan is designed to be streamlined, really targeted and focused on an audience that needs to understand basic concepts and policies and how the city is organized to respond to an event. Additional operating details may be provided in supporting plans maintained by city departments, or, for example, the Emergency Operations Center staff may have reference materials that the rest of the community may not necessarily need to read as part of their larger emergency plan. Also, the version in front of you this evening does not have any of the annexes incorporated in the physical copy. Those may come later or may be amended as need be in the future. Next slide, please. And then finally, the Emergency Operation Plan incorporates some key features. First, the concept of whole community, if you would. The City of Livermore is a diverse community made up of a number and large spectrum, if you would, of residents, visitors, people that work here. And so the plan is intended to really ensure that we understand that there's no such thing as a general public, that in fact we are a community made up of a number of individuals, organizations, a social fabric, if you would. And the EOP is intended to really address the potential needs and resources that that social fabric offers to the community. It discusses all 4 phases of emergency management, mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. It provides a significant summary of the potential hazards and impacts of these hazards were they to occur in the City of Livermore, giving you a primer, if you would, of what could go wrong and how bad could it be. It also reviews and provides a summary discussion, as well as integrating key state and federal systems. As I mentioned, the Incident Command System or the Standardized Emergency Management System are briefed and discussed fully here. Responsibilities are assigned by city department. The concept of operations section within the plan tells a story, if you would, of how coordination will occur within the city and with our local, state, and federal stakeholder partners, and bringing in other elements of the community, such as the private sector and community-based organizations. One section provides guidance on how and when to proclaim an emergency, as well as some sample proclamation language that you may utilize. And there's also a brief section describing the organization, responsibility, and processes that guide the operations of your Emergency Operations Center. Next slide, please. Now that the Emergency Operation Base Plan has been completed, the focus will turn to implementation and developing supporting capabilities. These efforts include sharing the plan in discussions with the county as well as California Office of Emergency Services, integrating the Emergency Operations Plan into preparedness efforts, including training and exercises that the city is already well underway with, as well as reviewing and developing, revising potentially annexes, for example, as briefed earlier, care and shelter or disaster debris management. Next slide, please. This concludes the formal presentation overview of the Emergency Operations Plan. Sir.
Staff's available to answer questions.
Are there any questions at this point?
Thanks for the report. I thought I turned it on. Obviously, I turned it off. Thanks for the report. I think it's very well done. One of the things that caught my attention was this whole community aspect that we're now promulgating. How is the community informed then of the EOP? I mean, we can approve it. We can have read it. And we can put it on the website, all those good things. But is there another way we can make sure that the whole community knows about this?
I'm going to defer this to Emergency Manager Herbert Cole.
Nice turnover there.
So typically the term whole community means that we engage the entire community in the development of the plan, and they're actually a partner in basically executing this plan. So some of the elements of this would be community involvement, such as our CERT programs. Those are the types of whole community type activities that are included in this type of plan. Amateur radio, the types of trainings that we do with the community. So when we're talking whole community, that's how we get this plan out to them, by engaging them through our community outreach and bringing them in to be a partner with the city in addressing how we would respond to a large-scale event.
So at this point, just because Mr. Cole was on here, and I'll just mention that the whole community really means not just our responsibility too, but we had a fairly robust discussion at the intergovernmental meeting, and we're talking about also with the school board and the park district. And you just take a couple of sentences and tell us how that factors in working with these other agencies within the city.
So each jurisdiction does have responsibility for emergency management. So the park district, the school district, they do have a jurisdictional responsibility to care for their jurisdiction. As part of the city of Livermore, we come together in that whole community process to work together, to coordinate together each jurisdiction, so that we have a singular focus on how we respond as a city. So that is another element of the whole community process.
So, go ahead.
Just one other question or point of clarification. So this is an update and revision to the 2005 Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan. So this is the first update since 2005. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's one of our council goals and priorities. We were running into one instance after another where we were lagging behind on our updates. So this is why we're here tonight. This is why we hired Mr. Cole to help coordinate things, to get ourselves back up to speed. So the last one was 2005. This is a 2016 update. How often are you considering this like a living, breathing document that we update annually? Or, I mean, when can we expect updates? Are they just as needed?
The recommended amount of time is every 5 years, but as we have an event or there's some sort of significant
learning
opportunity,
Right.
Thank you for that title, then the plan can be changed at that point. So it is a living document, but a full, deep review every 5 years.
Great, thank you.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to invite public comment. I believe Greg Scott has submitted a card.
Thank you, Greg Scott. I'm a little confused on some of the operations plan, especially when it comes to shelter. if we're having difficulty sheltering the unsheltered now in a non-emergency, I don't understand if there's a significant loss of housing in a broad emergency, how we're going to magically shelter a large number of people. Secondly, I don't understand the backup plan if there's a problem with the water supply, what the backup water supplies would be if there's some source of contamination or breakage in the infrastructure, that sort of thing. Third, I'm not clear on if there's an interruption to food supplies, if there's a mass transportation incident, it's mass casualty transportation incident, for example, in the report 2.3.9, if there happened to be a closure to the arterial highways, Interstate 680 and Interstate 580, just exactly how would Livermore get its food in such an emergency? Do we have any backup food storage plan? I'm not clear on that either. Also, not clear on, the report goes in 2.3.8 on energy disruption. I'm just not clear on what, if the electrical grid goes down, what we're going to do there. I happened to be in the power outage in San Diego in 2011. That was an unintended, what is it called here? Utility disruption, in that a major trunk line circuit was being replaced out by Yuma, which took down the grid, which happened to power northern Baja, Mexico, northern state of Mexico, West Phoenix, all the way to Orange County and San Diego. That was a sight to behold because the gasoline needs electric pumps to get to operate, and many people, I guess, were operating on an eighth of a tank of gas or something to see all the cars parked on the freeways of Southern California. Was a sight to behold. Not to mention, in the duration, the loss of food, frozen foods, the loss, well, the sewage plants there, they only have to do secondary treatment because they're located next to salt water. They're in lagoons, but they didn't apparently have backup power, so they dumped the sewage in lagoons, which went down the coast, and that was another sight to behold. So I'm not exactly clear on this report if we have a significant time of electrical outage, what we're going to do. In this 2.3.7 agricultural emergency and drought, nice little three-paragraph bleed on our agricultural history. Yes, we could have insect-related emergencies. Nice that we're considering that. We really need to be more cognizant of other things here, like the climate change. I mean, we had a 114-degree day this last September, and what we're doing on climate change, what that can do to agriculture, and we know the climate is changing in agriculture. And drought, well, I'm not sure the extent of this plan. We know, as I mentioned earlier, and I'll finish, we can look at the global situations to understand our local situations, and we should be doing that. We have 37 major aquifers in the world. 21 of them are in trouble. We know a lot about them from the GRACE satellites because we can measure the gravity between the two satellites, of the effect of the mass on the aquifers, and we're depleting aquifers greatly. And I don't know that we're going to get a water fix of 80% of Zone 7's supply from the state with the single water tunnel. So I think I'm not clear on a number of issues here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I might just ask Mr. Cole again to comment, because this is part of the conversation that we were having at the intergovernmental meeting. There are still a lot of particular details to be worked out. You named a few, but exactly how do we pre-position supplies? How often do we change them out? Where are they? Who's responsible? So I take it, and you guys can elaborate on it. This is a broad outline, but the real functional details are still in being developed, given the realities of what we're facing. So it's good points, but would you like to comment, Mr. Cole?
First and foremost, this plan is a framework, and it's a framework to bring the community together to work on those solutions, to get down in the weeds and determine, do we store food and water and things like that, or do we look for other solutions, just-in-time solutions? So look at this operations plan as a framework to address the big 30,000-foot view, and then we start to dig down and figure out, okay, what are the issues that we need to start putting projects around? And so this is the guidance document to help us do that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions at this point?
Sure. No, I just have a general comment. Thank you for putting this together. It's a wonderful update, albeit a little bit late. Any emergency exercise that I've ever been involved with that was in the Tri-Valley, one of the great advantages that we have is the airport. When you mention 580 and 680 going down, and even if we someday get some kind of rail service to Livermore, whether it's full BART or something else, 580, 680 going down in all the models means all the rail goes down, everything goes down, but we still have the airport. So I think that's a huge advantage. My emergency exercises in Contra Costa County, they always mention Buchanan. If you're around the airports, then the supplies get distributed outward. So that's great that we have this, a great asset so close in town. One of the things that Mr. Wente mentioned earlier is the size of the document. And, going through it, again, pointing out some interesting statistics, you put more tornado information in there. I almost think you're doing that to see if I'm reading it and if I'll mention it. But you did mention a few more tornadoes in town or around town, and that still is kind of mind-boggling that we've had. You don't think Livermore and tornadoes, you think, Cowboys and Adams and things like that. But one of the other items that I wanted to bring up, looking at the percent fire calls for service table, that's a very interesting table. You see that our total fire calls fluctuate at a low from 370 to a high of around 450, but the vegetation fires are increasing. So I wonder if that, if we have any, or we will be looking at fuel management strategies to help try to cut down on the vegetation fires. But another item that I want to bring up, looking at the total service calls. The total service calls at our fire department and also our police department it's increasing every year, and we're going to need to address that at a higher level at some point. So there's great statistics throughout. I encourage people to read it, or at least thumb through it and look at some of the tables. The other question that I have, when do we receive our elected official NIMS training? Is that on schedule? I read through the training section, and when I came to the elected officials, it was like, as a matter of fact, G191. It would be great to take that at some point and subject my fellow council members to some EOC type.
So as some of you will require, several years ago, we did have a round of council training on that, and that actually is on our list of things to get scheduled this year as well, so that all of you understand essentially your responsibilities and roles during an emergency as well.
Perfect. So you will get to enjoy some NIMS training. And
what makes you think I haven't had NIMS training?
Oh, I believe you had NIMS training. I'm not. And
I called it numbing NIMS.
I wouldn't say that. How dare you?
Well, the one I took.
All right. But great job. Thank you very much. It's another item checked off the emergency preparedness list. So thank you.
So do I have a...
Yeah, I'll move we approve the emergency operations plan for the city.
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? No. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No opposed. Passes unanimously. So at this point, committee item 7, committee reports and matters initiated. So I'll start to my left.
Thank you, sir. I last week had a couple of meetings, Stop Waste. And I'm also a member of the Community Monitoring Committee, which meets, I think, quarterly. And that is to look at the Altamont landfill and make sure that they're fulfilling all their requirements. I also subbed for the mayor this morning at a Community of Character collaborative ceremony around for Martin Luther King, which they give legacy awards for people that have been particularly influential or participatory in the Tri-Valley in terms of education and thinking about how nonprofits can help folks. That was really a pretty nice event this morning for breakfast over in Pleasanton. I also want to comment that I've been talking, and probably my colleagues as well, been doing a lot of discussion with folks over the last several weeks about the downtown and development. And believe me, for all the folks that with whom I've spoken, they all have a different opinion. And I, for one, am looking forward to next week to hear what folks have to say about the process and what is now out from the city in terms of the ideas. The thing that's impressed me is not only do people have an opinion about this, but I think we all ought to recognize how much better the plans are that we have today versus what we were considering a year or more ago. With additional parking, open space, less housing, but still some housing, and so on and so forth. But I think the plans have come together, and I appreciate all the comments we got tonight, both for and against what we're doing. But I think everybody would agree that the plans are so much better now than what they were a year ago at this time. So again, I want to thank those that have taken the time to reach out to me in one way or another for the conversation, and I appreciate all the points of view, and I'm looking forward to next week having the conversation about it.
Okay.
Sure, I'd like to start out by seconding Councilmember Carling's comments about the process. It is very interesting. I'm trying to reach out to everybody who is reaching out to myself, whether it's phone conversations or emails, sometimes spending an hour and a half with people on the phone. It's very interesting, and it's great to have the back and forth communication. I am just very impressed with the enthusiasm for this project from the community. I know some communities actually struggle with getting enough people out to speak about projects. I don't think that's our problem, but I do really appreciate the public participation, and I think it has led to better options today than what we had 2 years ago, than what we had 20 years ago. So yes, I'm looking forward to Monday night. In terms of matters reporting out, on the 10th, I attended the first Tri-Valley San Joaquin Regional Rail group. Assemblymember Baker and Eggman spoke before the group, gave us words of encouragement to go forth and get something done. I know they fought very hard for us getting AB 758 passed, so I'd like to thank them for all of their efforts. I am very encouraged with this group, and I think we're going to get some really great plans analyzed and find out what's best and what's feasible for Livermore and the Tri-Valley. Then earlier today, I had 2 meetings before our closed session. The first was the Tri-Valley Transportation Commission. Earlier today, we approved the last phase of the Highway 84 extension. So hopefully, I wouldn't say sometime soon because we're still working on our portions through town, but it's the remaining portions from the pass all the way to I-680. So that will be 2 lanes in both directions instead of going back down to 1. So that was great. And then also I was at the LAVTA Projects and Services Committee. Nothing major to report other than we are closely tracking the depot refurb, and that's going along very well. If you drive by or follow Wheels on Facebook, you'll receive regular updates as to the progress of the depot. In talking with some of the members who are involved, in particular with the Heritage Guild, I believe they found the original, or they think they found the original telegraph machine for the depot. And there's current discussions about, I mean, the detail that people are putting into this. There's discussions as to whether the chimney should be recreated as the depot was built or as it was rebuilt when the chimney fell over in the 1901 earthquake. So, I mean, we have some people that are very focused, and I'm confident that this building will turn out exactly how we hoped. So with that, I have no matters initiated. I'm done.
Okay, for myself, there were 2 meetings I'll mentioned. One was the intergovernmental meeting, and the majority of that discussion was around the emergency preparedness. I just want to say again, I think that's so extremely important for the community. I'm glad we're making progress, and we've got really good staff on board now. The other one, Altamont Open Space, I didn't attend in person, but it gave direction, and we're moving forward on the process of getting a consultant, a professor from Berkeley, to help us understand and prioritize our land acquisition strategy. So one thing on matters initiated, you mentioned the telegraph. We did have one speaker talk about the high-speed internet, and I guess at this point I don't understand where we are at that and what we might have to do. And so if there's something you wanted to say now, but maybe you could just at an appropriate time come back with what our strategy is or plans in that regard, and then we could hook up that telegraph to it.
Yeah, and if I can make a comment on that as well, I'm one of the residents, even before being on the council, that used to email Google saying, please install Google Fiber. I understand they're starting to scale back their installation rollouts. I've been very interested in fiber throughout town, so I think that's something that, if we have nothing else better to do, I mean, if staff is twiddling their thumbs with no major issues on your plate, that would be great to look into it.
Okay, with that, I'd just like to adjourn this to a special city council meeting on January 29th at 7 p.m. council chambers, and to a regular city council meeting on February 12th at 7 p.m. Thank you.